welcome back to On the Grid Podcast post-season edition. I am Ethan Evans, joined as ever by Adrian Kisa. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. It feels weird not to be doing a preview or a review or all that sort of shenanigan. I mean, we're still continuing it as episode 42, I'd say, because it's not the new season just yet. Post-season edition, whatever you want to call it. It's still kind of ongoing from last season until the 2024 season starts. But yeah, I'm looking forward to an episode where we really don't have to delve into talking trash or highly praising one certain driver, that being Max Verstappen. But then again, it is the average driver rating, so you know who's going to end up on top once again.
Yeah, speaking of talking trash and praising up one particular driver, we are doing our season review, our 1 to 10 driver ratings for the entire season. So that is exactly what we're going to be doing. As I said, we're on episode 42, so we're only 10 episodes away, 10 weeks away from a year of On the Grid Podcast, season 3, and soon it'll be time for season 4. So stay tuned for that. So first, let's crack on with these driver ratings. A bit of a disclaimer: these are just our average ratings throughout the season. So these are after our race reviews, these are the grades we've been given for all of the drivers. And that's how we're judging this. So don't get annoyed if your favorite driver is a little bit lower than you think he should be. This is just our opinion throughout the entire season, so it's not as if we've come up with it today. And also, if we have like a 0.5, so like a 6.5, that'll be counted as a 6 in the when I read out the lists of grades. So in 22nd, and with no real surprise, getting an average grade of a 4.25 is Nick De Vries. 10 races, obviously. He got 1 1, 2 2s, a 3, a 4, 2 5s, and 3 6s. Yeah, not a great point score for Nick De Vries, and it's no real surprise, is it, that he's in last position?
Well, after the race that he had in Monza in 2022 for Williams, scoring, I think it was 4 points with an 8th place finish, if I'm not mistaken. Everything was heading in the right direction for Nick De Vries. But I think going to a subpar AlphaTauri team for 2023, I don't know whether it hampered him a lot, but I think it definitely didn't favour him in maybe his race style, because I think the Williams team were a lot better than the AlphaTauri team throughout 2023. I mean, the point gap in the Construction Championship at the end of the 2023 season suggests differently. But I just think Nick De Vries, probably his best in Formula One was when he won the F2 Championship a long time ago. Should have got the move up to F1, and maybe we would have seen a different Nick De Vries now than we saw for only 10 races in 2023. But it's no real surprise that Nick De Vries is last place, is dead last, 22nd out of 22 drivers. Just very, very poor throughout the season. Just couldn't get to grips with that AlphaTauri car. And ultimately had to pay the price and was replaced mid-season by Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah, so there's a big jump up between 22nd and 21st. So Nick De Vries got 4.25 average, and 21st is 4.93. So a big distance there, and that is Logan Sargent. So he's had a couple of standout performances. So he's got given an 8 and 2 9s, and then a 1 and 2 2s as well. So it's kind of averaged out at around a 5. A decent rookie season from Logan Sargent. This is something he needs to build off next season now that he's been confirmed in that Williams seat. And I think that unless he shows improvement next season, then he won't be be in Formula One for more than those 2 seasons. But it's all dependent on him, because he's shown some good development throughout the season, particularly towards the end of the season, where he wasn't too far off Alex Albon, despite that Williams maybe slowing down or being caught up by its competitors towards the back of the grid.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you with Logan Sargent. He's had a very, very decent rookie season. I mean, he did only score 1 point throughout the whole season, which I mean, compared to his more experienced teammate, Alex Albon, who I think scored 28, if I'm not mistaken. I think Williams finished on 29 points overall, and Logan only contributed to one. Um, it's a big margin, but then again, I think Williams are a team who are looking to build on their decent season in 2022, built on it in 2023, and I think in 2024 they want to close the gap to the midfield as much as possible. So obviously Logan's now been confirmed as the second Williams driver for 2024. Um, and like with most drivers, like Yuki Tsunoda's in the past, Zhou Guan Yu's in your past, the second season is kind of make or break. And we've seen the two Asian drivers go past beyond that point, and have dealt well with the pressure of that make or break season, and have continued on in the sport. So for Logan Sargent, it is a make or break season in 2024, and whether that kind of puts a lot of pressure onto his shoulders. It all goes down to him. But it's definitely the 2023 season is kind of a building blocks, and in 2024 he kind of needs to step up, gain a few more points finishes, and help the team as much as possible in the Constructors' Championship. But for a first season, he's not done too badly.
Yeah, moving on now to 20th place, Kevin Magnussen with an average grade of a 4.98, so only 0.05 higher than Logan Sargent. And it's been a difficult season for K Mag, hasn't it? He's got 6 4s and and 7 5s, so that's you can really tell where his average has been. He's not deviated too much from that. He's got 1 8, nothing higher than that for Kevin Magnussen. And to be fair, I think that this is a stopgap. You know, the reason that Kevin Magnussen's been given the seat next year, and it was given so early, is because of the promising F2 driver, Ollie Behrman. He's obviously with the Ferrari Academy, and Haas have those links. So maybe give him another season in F2 and see what he can do. And if he continues at the rate he has, then he'll be taking that second Haas seat alongside Nico Hulkenberg. But it's not been good enough for Kevin Magnussen. He's only got the 3 points this season. He's finished 19th in the Drivers' Championship. The Haas has been an absolute awful car, but he's been outclassed and outshone by his teammate Nico Hulkenberg.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you once again. It's just been a very, very subpar season for Kevin Magnussen. And I don't know whether you can solely put it down to the car, because Nico Hulkenberg, even though the race pace is absolutely awful, he's been able to do it in qualifying. So I don't know whether you can solely base it on the car, because the qualifying pace has been all right. It just fades away in the race. But Kevin Magnussen, like you say, only 3 points scored, which is only 2 points more than rookie Logan Sargent. And you're thinking there's a lot more experience in Kevin Magnussen than there is in Logan Sargent. But I think it's a 50-50 split between the race car and the driver. I don't know. Like you say, Ollie Behrman is probably knocking on the door of a second driver's seat in Haas for 2025. But I mean, it all depends on how Kevin Magnussen performs in 2024, and how the car development of Haas is down to K Mag. But 2023, very, very subpar. And I think I'm going to put it on record, but I think Kevin Magnussen is still living off the hype of that Sao Paulo Grand Prix pole in 2022. If you can quite remember it, where it just absolutely downpour, similar to this season's. The downpour came and he got pole position. So he's still living off that hype. But in 2023, very, very poor, and probably deserved to be in the bottom 3 places of our average driver ratings.
And in 19th place with an average grade of a 5.05 is Lance Stroll. And now I think a few people might get subjected to a little bit of recency bias with this one, because he has ended the season quite well. with some good performances. But overall, it's not been good enough. So there's been 7. We've given out 7 1 out of 10s this season. Lance Stroll has accounted for 3 of them. So that just shows you where he's been. He's got 2 8s and 1 9. So he's had a couple of good performances, but those 1 out of 10s you're thinking at like Monaco and Singapore, it's just not been good enough for him. And it's been a quite poor showing from Lance Stroll. So he's only slightly above Kevin Magnussen, and as we like to say, he's in semi-retirement mode as it is, isn't he? Maybe he's thinking of those tennis courts playing against Novak Djokovic, but who knows? Not a good season for Lance Stroll, and he's been absolutely destroyed in the championship by Alonso. I think there's about 160 odd points. I think Alonso's almost got triple the score that Lance Stroll has, which you think that Aston Martin only got beaten by about 20 points in the constructors to McLaren. That should have been wrapped up long ago if Lance Stroll was not even matching Alonso's pace, but just being a bit closer to him, being on scoring some solid points, particularly towards the start of the season where that car was really good. Not a good performance, and I think 19th is accurate for Lance Stroll.
Yeah, just before people get onto our backs, I'm going to repeat it again and do another disclaimer that this is the average driver ratings of the course of the whole season. We know that Lance Stroll has gone on to score some decent finishes in the last couple of races of the season, but overall, it's another driver who's been outclassed by his teammate. Comparing similar to Kevin Magnussen and Logan Sargent previously. Fernando Alonso was absolutely wiped the floor with Lance Stroll. Don't get me wrong. I know Lance Stroll is purely in the sport because of his father's pull in Aston Martin. And yeah, it's another driver who's probably, I wouldn't say his love of the sport is fading away due to the last couple of races, but like you mentioned, semi-retirement mode, probably not going to play against Novak Djokovic, probably playing some Swiss courts with Roger Federer maybe, and enjoy his downtime in the winter break, getting himself ready for the ATP championships wherever he goes. But it's another poor season for Lance Stroll. He had the same at Racing Point against Sergio Perez. Similarly to the season against Vettel, it's just been wherever he goes, apart from maybe when he was at Williams, wherever he has gone, it seems he's had a far more experienced teammate, and it's just been the first driver outclassing Lance Stroll. And it's the case once again in 2023. The Fernando Alonso hype train, the L plan in green has come back in full force. And Fernando delivered some fantastic results compared to Lance Stroll, who's not been able to conjure up anything and unfortunately cost them a place in the Constructors' Championship. So another driver has had a very, very poor season, and one that will be hoping to kind of reevaluate what went wrong and hopefully right his wrongs in 2024.
And in joint 17th is both Alfa Romeo drivers, Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas, both with an average grade of 5.59. And there is nothing that epitomizes Alfa Romeo's grade season more than that. They're two drivers neck and neck and not high up, both tied for 17th and 18th. Zhou's got 2 9 out of 10s, which gives him the edge over Bottas. So he's in 17th, Bottas in 18th. He's only got the 1 9 out of 10. But it's just been very poor from Alfa Romeo. They've ended the season terribly. Luckily, they were spared from being last in the constructors due to Haas and how bad they were. But a very poor season from both of them. I think Valtteri Bottas is probably enjoying his winding down years. He's almost similar to a Kimi Räikkönen when he was at Alfa Romeo. And then Zhou Guanyu is in danger of turning into a bit of a Giovinazzi and a bit of a forgotten man he needs a big season next year with a car underneath him that is good enough to occasionally fight for points in order to justify why he's in the sport. Because I think his contract's up at the end of next year, along with about 13 other drivers. So it could be a really interesting silly season during the summer break next year.
What epitomises Alfa Romeo is them needing a gearbox, a new gearbox, every single race, because it seemed it. Well, I mean, it's an on-running joke with me, because every single time it seems that they've had some component changes or they've had a slight upgrade. They seem to be on the rise, but then 2, 3 races deep, they just go downhill again, and they have a gearbox again, a new gearbox, and they go uphill again. Like we saw in Hungary, where I think we had Bottas and Zhou in Q3, or um, I think it was both of them, or even Bottas in Q3 on his own. Um, but Alfa Romeo, very very average, and that reflects in the two drivers being 17th and 18th with a 5.59, was it, for the two. So it's been a very average season for Alfa Romeo, and they're another team that are realistically crying out for some upgrades, because in 2024, if Haas make some moves and have decided they decided to scrap the 2023 car early and heavily develop the 2024 car, Alfa Romeo could be in trouble and finishing 10th. And obviously, Alfa Romeo aren't Alfa Romeo anymore. I think in 2024, it's just Sauber, as Alfa Romeo have pulled out that link from Sauber. So it'll be just back to the Sauber team once again. So whether Sauber can do it, whether the Ferrari engine that they're provided can do it once again, I don't know. But they're crying out for something that can go their way, and that they can have a successful 2024. Because if nothing happens and the 2024 car is similar to this season's car just gone, they could be in real danger of slipping to the back of the field.
Yeah, you mentioned that Hungary qualifying. Zhou put it in fifth, Bottas in seventh. They outqualified Leclerc, Perez, Alonso. This was a remarkable performance that I think we've almost forgotten about. And in Qatar, they got a double point scoring finish. It's they've had their moments this season, but just not enough of them. And I think in the drivers' championship, Bottas finished 15th and Zhou 17th. So they've got a decent points pool. They just didn't show enough of those performances throughout the season, which was a little bit disappointing. Edging the two Alfa Romeo drivers is Nico Hulkenberg with an average grade of a 5.61. Now, I think maybe this might be a little bit too harsh, actually. I think because Nico Hulkenberg, what he's done in that Haas has been absolutely outstanding. The amount of Q3 finishes he's got, I think he's still, I might be wrong, I think he still has more Q3 appearances than Perez this season. I'm not sure if that's still true, because that was an ongoing thing towards the start of the season, isn't there? Or sorry, around the mid-season, where Nico Hulkenberg had more Q3 appearances than Sergio Perez. But that race pace is just awful. He's only had the 1 point scoring finish, Nico Hulkenberg. Obviously, he got those few points in the sprint race, where he finished fourth, by the way, at Austria. But in the races, he's only had a one top 10 finish, and he's finished 16th. He's finished 6 points ahead of his teammate. It's crazy. So a very good season from Nico Hulkenberg. And I think for a first season back in F1, everybody thought, it might be quite close between him and Kevin Magnussen, two experienced drivers. He's absolutely wiped the floor with him. And I think he's shown his class. And he might be thinking, maybe there's a better seat coming up next year that I can find myself in for 2025.
The thing is, whilst you were talking there, I was trying to find the stats regarding Q3 finishes, and I can't seem to find it, which is a shame. But but I'm pretty. It must be Nico Hulkenberg taking that crown over Sergio Perez, which is quite funny. With Perez being in that Red Bull in that quickest car on the grid this season just gone. But Nico Hulkenberg, he's gone back into the sport. And he's done very, very well. Like you say, I think we've harshly criticised Nico Hulkenberg a little bit, purely on the basis of that Haas car. Race pace it's a dog. It simply does not drive. And in qualifying, Nico Hulkenberg has done his utmost best to propel the car as further up the grid as he can. But in the races, it just goes backwards. He just slips back and he can't do anything really. But to be ahead of the two Alfa Romeo drivers and to be ahead of his teammate Kevin Magnussen, I nearly forgot who his teammate was there. I was going to say Mick Schumacher for some reason. But to be ahead of his teammate and to be ahead of his two Alfa Romeo drivers is a little bit of a consolation because this season in the midfield and the upper pack has been very, very tight. So to be ahead of those drivers, I think, is a good consolation. But if we were just purely doing it on the qualifying pace and how he's done in qualifying, I think he'd be inside the top 10, well and truly inside the top 10. It's just down to the races where we've had to grade him a little bit lower. But I think on a season overall, on a reflection, I think 16th place overall isn't too bad for Nico Hulkenberg.
Moving on now to 15th place. Now, this is a shock, and I would like to remind everyone, we don't necessarily agree with these. These might be our average ratings, but I don't necessarily agree with the order in all of these. So in 15th is Yuki Tsunoda. Now, maybe this is a little bit of recency bias as well, because he started the season so brilliantly and he ended it at such a high level as well. It was just that middle of the season where he kind of lost his way a bit. Maybe he got a bit complacent, we said, with Nick de Vries because of the level he was driving at. But his performance did elevate once again when Daniel Ricciardo came back into the car from Kota when they had that very good point scoring run towards the end of the season. But it's been a good season, I'd say, for Yuki Tsunoda. I think 6.14 is probably not too far from where it should be. He's got 8 5 out of 10s. He's got 5 7 out of 10s. He's only got the 1 9, which is his highest grade from us this season, which was from Brazil. But yeah, I think maybe he should be a few places higher, to be fair.
I don't know whether he should be a few places higher because, like we mentioned there, he had a very good start to the season and a very good end. It was just that middle part of the season where, like we mentioned, Nick de Vries was in that second seat and he was getting complacent. And then Daniel Ricciardo came in and you were thinking, is he going to be able to cope with a little bit of added pressure with Daniel Ricciardo coming back into the sport? And in the first instant, it looked like he was kind of a little bit troubled by Daniel Ricciardo coming into AlphaTauri. But then as soon as Liam Lawson and then Daniel Ricciardo transitioned back into the car, I think he coped very well. And then his performance were just propelling and propelling and propelling. But it's just that mid part of the season where he wasn't able. He had 2 did not starts. And I don't know when that last happened ever, because he did not start in Monza, which incidentally was the second time he's not started at Monza. In the last he's only raced 3 times in Monza, I want to say in F1. So to have a 2 out of 3 races where you've not even started a race is very poor. And then he did not start another race, and you're thinking, right, is Yuki Tsunoda cursed or something? What on earth is happening? But then towards the latter stages of the 2023 season, he's been able to outdrive Daniel Ricciardo and outdrive the AlphaTauri car, that has been very, very poor this season, similar to Alfa Romeo and Haas. Those 3 teams have struggled quite a bit this season with their car and with their development of the car. But don't get us wrong. We know, everybody knows that Yuki Tsunoda had a good start and a good end. It was just that middle part where he faltered and inevitably is lowered down than he kind of should be.
Yeah, I think you're referring to. So he obviously had that did not start in Monza, and then he retired on the first lap at Singapore. I think Sergio Perez actually crashed into him at Singapore, which caused him to retire. Moving on to 14th place, a bit of a jump to 6.34 is Esteban Ocon. I think he's been outperformed by Pierre Gasly. I think a lot of people expected Pierre Gasly to be a bit of a flop at Alpine. I think Esteban Ocon was expected to walk all over him, and Ocon has had some standout performances, particularly that podium at Monaco, where he was absolutely sublime. But he's also had a 1 out of 10 and a 2 out of 10. So it's not been the best season for Esteban Ocon. Obviously, he had that 1 out of 10 at Monza and a 2 out of 10 for Bahrain, where he got about 50 penalties. So I'm sure he'll be home for a bit better next season. That Alpine has been a bit nowhere really. It's not really been able to challenge with the teams in front, but it's been too quick for the teams behind. They've always been between about 9th and 12th, I would say. So a bit of a difficult one, but he's had a solid season. But I think he'll be disappointed that he didn't beat his teammate.
Everybody was hoping. Everybody kind of knew what sort of rivalry we were getting into when we had Pierre Gasly join Alpine alongside Esteban Ocon, two French drivers in a French team that have kind of had, I wouldn't say beef, but have been kind of a little bit, there's been a little bit of a rivalry in the past between those two. And we were hoping for a little bit more of a fiercer battle. But Alpine overall have not been able to kind of propel themselves closer to the top four, the top five teams this season, and they've kind of been in a land of their own, essentially in sixth place in the constructors. But Esteban Ocon, the only memory that I think stands out for me is that podium in Monaco. Apart from that, I think it's just been a very, very average season for Esteban Ocon. And that reflects once again, I think perfectly reflects in our overall driver ratings for Esteban Ocon. And I wouldn't say he's been one of them drivers that has had a lackluster season. He's done okay. He's done what was expected of him, and the gaining those points finishes was crucial for him. If, for example, he did a Lance Stroll with Fernando Alonso, then questions would have arose on his driving ability alongside Pierre Gasly. He's obviously not going to be happy with himself that he's been beat by Pierre, but he's not going to lose sleep over it. He knows that the two are very equals in the team. But yeah, just this season, I think it's been average. It's been okay. Can't really say much more than that. It's one of them seasons where it wasn't an ideal one. But I think the podium in Monaco was the standout, and that's what kind of gives Esteban Ocon the edge over the likes of Yuki Tsunoda and Nico Hulkenberg, for example.
And just about edging Esteban Ocon out by 0.02 of a grade, which is essentially half a point, is Sergio Perez at 6.36. Now, I think this is completely fair. Sergio Perez has not had a good time of it. Sergio Perez this season, we spoke about him at the start of the season potentially being in a championship battle, and then by the mid-season we said, is he going to lose his seat? And I think that perfectly summarizes his season. He's had 1 1, 2 2s, but on the flip side he's had 2 9s and a 10. That 10 obviously for not for Australia, for Saudi Arabia, where he held off Verstappen brilliantly. And got his first win of the season. We thought the championship battle was alive, but it wasn't to be. He held on to second in the end. He actually finished the season in relatively good form. Got back on the podium, and had some good performances. But yeah, I think he definitely needs a much better season next year in order to hold off some of the pressure from some of the drivers looking like they could take that Red Bull seat from him.
I'd have to agree with you once again. Sergio Perez has not had a good time of it at Red Bull. And after 2, 3, 4 races, we were thinking, yeah, championship battle alive, no problem. After about 6 or 7, we were like, yeah, it's over, it's done and dusted. Max Verstappen's wrapped it up once again. But his qualifying and his what typifies Sergio Perez qualifying down the field, making his way through the field and finishing in a decent points finish. That's typified him this season, and I think that's why he's so far down the order. Because if he was able to uh, couple those two together and add a very good mixture of qualifying very well and making those overtakes and finishing first or second on a few occasions, then we would have been talking about Perez being in the top 10 of these ratings. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do so. And he was out qualified by his teammate, he was out raced by his teammate, and he was outclassed by his teammate, Max Verstappen. So perfect reflection on Sergio Perez's season. Very, very average. And this man, more than any other driver, I think, on the field, really needs to buckle up his ideas because 2025 is coming up, and his contract expires at the end of next season. So, what will happen at Red Bull? I don't know, but certainly there might be a few changes if Perez doesn't perform to the standard of Max Verstappen, or at least close to Max Verstappen's standard next season.
Yeah, exactly. I think I saw a podcast with Alex Albon recently, and he's actually he's spoken about his time at Red Bull, and if you actually look at it, the average gap between Alex Albon and Max Verstappen is closer than the gap between Perez and Verstappen, and that's very telling. But the difference is that the Red Bull wasn't the quickest car when Alex Albon was there, and he was so being a few tenths off meant he was 8th or 9th rather than Perez being sort of 3rd or 4th. Well, apart from this season, obviously, where he's been much lower down the order, but which goes to reaffirm that that status. And you look at Alex Albon, how he's performing at Williams, and would they be better off with him in that seat still? It is an interesting one. But moving on to 12th position, someone we didn't think was going to be featuring in this list at the start of the season, it's Daniel Ricciardo. Now, I will just point out this is an average grade, so it's from the 7 races in which he's performed in, but he's got a 10 out of 10, and he hasn't got anything lower than a 5 out of 10. So 6.57 for Ricciardo, so a decent gap between himself and Perez, and it's been brilliant seeing him back on the grid. That performance in Mexico typifies exactly what the guy can still do. He's got so much to offer F1. You know, he qualified up on the second row. He qualified in 4th in an AlphaTauri car, which before that race had only scored about 6 points all season, and he's put it 4th. It was a brilliant performance. I still think that he would have finished higher if it wasn't for that safety car or for that red flag. Even he would have finished much higher and got some more points, and maybe that would have been enough for AlphaTauri to beat Williams. But who knows? But a great performance from Daniel Ricciardo coming back into F1, and hopefully he can build on this next season.
Ricciardo, a driver of a lot of if, buts, or maybes, but he absolutely showed us what he can still do in the sport. He didn't have the best of time at McLaren, and I think that put him on the back burner when it comes to F1. Everybody was just thinking, what a waste of talent. He could have been a future world champion, and I think he still can be. If Red Bull pull the plug in 2025. But then again, we never know until that happens. But I certainly think that Daniel Ricciardo still has that winning mentality, that podium finishing mentality in him still. But for AlphaTauri, he came into the sport, had 2 or 3 races. then had that unfortunate hand injury that put him out for what was it, four or five races, I think. I think it was four that Liam Lawson stepped in and kind of deputised for him. And then he came back, Mexico, the highlight, fourth place in qualifying. Obviously wasn't able to score as many points as I think he wanted to due to the red flag in that race. But certainly he showed what he is still capable of and what he can still do. And coming back to the sport is no mean feat, especially mid-season. So for him to do what he could do best, and to finish kind of, I mean, we say finish a long stretch ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. He raced a lot less than Yuki Tsunoda did. Don't get us wrong. But to obviously have a better half of the season than Nick De Vries did goes a long way. And I think the experience kind of showed for Daniel Ricciardo and AlphaTauri coupled together was kind of, I won't say match made in heaven, but it was kind of a match that I think Daniel Ricciardo didn't even expect, and I think he excelled in. So ahead of 2024, it needs to be a good season, a good clean season for Daniel Ricciardo. It's obviously a clean slate, and he's just got to do what he does best, get as many points finishes as possible, show Christian Horner that he has that ability to knock on the door of the likes of Max Verstappen if he gets paired with him at Red Bull once again, and maybe a true comeback to Red Bull is on the cards once again.
Moving on now to 11th place, just missing out on the top 10 is Pierre Gasly. As we said, he beat his teammate. It wasn't easy to, given that Ocon's been there for a number of years now. He needed that move, I think, and he's had a very good season. He's averaged out a 6.73, had some very good performances in that time. He's got 2 9s and 2 10s. Obviously, got a brilliant podium at Zandvoort, finishing third. And it is a very good season from Pierre Gasly. I think after last season, where that AlphaTauri wasn't the best, a lot of the hype around him sort of died down a bit, unfairly as well. Because you think about how good he was in 2021 and 2020, he was putting that AlphaTauri in places it should not have been. Obviously, got that win as well. But he's finished 11th in our driver ratings and 11th in the championship. So he's been right in the middle there. And I think he's suffered because of the poor Alpine and the Alpine not really having a place on the grid, because it's been too fast for the back markers of like the Williams, the AlphaTauris, but it's not been on the pace of the Aston Martins and the McLarens over the course of the season. There's been races where, most races, to be fair, the Alpine's been thereabouts, where they're able to fight for the lower points positions. But it's never been on that level where they can really challenge over the course of the season. And, they haven't had, between Ocon and Gasly, they finished in the points in around half the races. So that says it all, really. It's only one of them finishing the points at any given time. But Gasly, a good season. Hopefully he can build on it in the future.
Yeah, Gasly has had a decent season, I'd say. Obviously, like we said, he was able to outscore his teammate in his first season at Alpine. And as we mentioned, I think the Alpine were struck with a lot of bad luck during this season. A lot of DNFs, a lot of incidents. And I think that kind of hampered their progress if they wanted to build on it and try and get anywhere close to the Aston Martin and the McLarens. But like we mentioned, I think Pierre Gasly needed that step up to Alpine from AlphaTauri. He needed to show his talent and show his worth in Formula One in a team that's a little bit higher up than AlphaTauri, and I think he did that. He did that perfectly at Alpine. But it's just all about kind of progressing further on, and it's all down to the car, less to the driver, more to the car. Alpine need to deliver a very good race car in 2024 for Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon if they are to make that progression closer to Aston Martin and McLaren. But overall, Pierre's had a very good season. Like we mentioned, 11th in the driver standings, 11th in our driver ratings, and that's paired up together very well, showcasing what season he's had.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on now into the top 10, and this is one I definitely do not agree with. I will just say there's 0.23 between 4th and 10th, because in 10th is Alex Albon. Now, I think the end of the season has really hurt him. The last 3 races in particular, he's not scored above a 5. His average has been a 4.5. But Alex Albon has had a brilliant season. He's had 1 10 out of 10, 3 9s, 4 8s. He's not got below a 4, and he only got that twice. Some of the performances, that 7th place in Canada, the 7th place in Monza, he's really taken his driving to another level this year. And I think this is a driver whose stock has increased the most this season. And I think if Williams continue on this development path when they're giving him a better car and a better car that's able to consistently fight for points, there's no reason he can't stay there for another couple of years. But if next season, by halfway point next season, if he's sat there and he's not had the car he's deserved and he needs, I think he could find himself in a different seat for 2025, to be fair, and a higher level seat as well at that. But it's been a great season from Alex Albon. Thoroughly deserved top 10. I'm just surprised it's not higher.
Surprised it's not higher, yes, potentially, but it's a similar case to Yuki Tsunoda where he's had a very, very good season, Alex Albon, up to a certain point, and the last couple of races have hampered him a lot. And he's kind of dropped down a little bit. I think in mid-season he was quite a bit higher up, especially with those performances in Monza and Canada. He was quite a little bit. It was further up the driver ratings rankings than he finished. But his stock has certainly increased. It's increased a lot. And Williams will take a lot. It will take Williams a lot to keep a hold of him for 2025 if they don't deliver the car that he needs to battle inside the top 10 on regular occasions. So it's a valuable place for Alex Albon to finish 10th with 1 point in our driver ratings. But then again, I think Williams are another team that really need to develop their car, especially for Alex Albon's sake. Because if they don't deliver the car that he needs, like I said, it could be Alex Albon out and they could be looking for a new number one to drive a team forward and to propel them forward. But for 2023, Alex Albon has certainly had a fantastic season.
Slightly ahead of Alex Albon on a 7.00 is Oscar Piastri. Now, we've spoken so highly about his rookie season, how well he's performed. He's been absolutely fantastic this season. I think probably the best rookie season since Max Verstappen back in, 2014, 2015, around then. He's had 2 10 out of 10s, 3 9 out of 10s, 2 8 out of 10s, to name just a few. Obviously got those first couple of podiums back to back in Japan and Qatar. But he's been so close to Norris all season. I don't think the head-to-heads actually do him justice because it makes it seem as if Norris is absolutely beating him comprehensively, when in fact, for much of the season, Piastri's been right on his level, just slightly behind. And I think this guy has got bags of potential, and in a few years' time, he's going to be fighting for championships, fighting for race victories on a consistent basis. If he's at the right team at the right time, there's no reason why he can't be a multiple world champion by the end of his career.
Think about it as well. Oscar Piastri has won a race before Lando Norris has for McLaren. Yes, okay, it was a sprint race victory, but a victory nonetheless. And he's done it before Lando Norris. We obviously know that Lando Norris could have won that race in Russia many moons ago. Was it not for the downpour that kind of happened and for the strategy to go in the bin with Lando not coming in for the wet tires? But Oscar Piastri, a fantastic rookie season, finishing inside the top 10 in the driver standings. and finishing inside the top 10 in our driver ratings. So, I mean, it's just, once again, I think he's had a couple of races where he's not been able to deliver. I mean, the start of the season for McLaren was absolutely woeful, and Oscar kind of it hampered Oscar's progress a little bit. But as soon as those upgrades came, Oscar took them in his stride, was able to get onto the podium a couple of times. Obviously got that sprint race victory in, I believe it. Where was it? I can't remember. Where was it?
Qatar.
I was going to say Qatar, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to mistaken it with Belgium because I know he got on the podium in Belgium, but I just didn't want to mistake the two, and then look like an absolute fool. Because I'm mixing the two races together. But he's had fantastic races throughout the season. I think the latter stages of the season, I don't want to say he faded away a little bit, but I think he kind of had a little bit of a wibble wobble during the last couple of races. And I think if he eradicates some of his mistakes that he had in 2023 and doesn't put his foot wrong in 2024, I think he's a potential race winner without a doubt and a potential world champion when that happens. If he does progress to a Red Bull or a Mercedes or a Ferrari in the future when they have great cars, we never know what will happen. But he's definitely a future proper race winner and a future world champion without a doubt.
Yeah, and on now to eighth place, and I do have to stress that this is an average grade once again, is Liam Lawson. He's got 5 races. He only got 1 grade below a 7 out of 10, which was his 3 out of 10 in Qatar, where he didn't have the best race. He got a 7 in Zandvoort, a 7.5 in Monza, an 8 in Japan, but the 10 out of 10 for Singapore. And it's absolutely remarkable. He's only 0.06 off being 4th place or tied for 4th place. He had a great string of races. Obviously, it was a bit of a sour note to end on in Qatar, but apart from that, he was absolutely phenomenal. Really showed his worth and why he deserves a seat. And I think, depending what happens in that Red Bull camp next year during the silly season, I think 2025 he has got to be in a seat. I'm shocked that he wasn't given a seat for 2024. But 2025 he has to have a seat in Formula One. He's shown he's good enough over a consistent number of races as well. Not like Nick De Vries, where he only done one race and there was a lot of hype around him. He's done it across 5 races. He's showed his pace, stepped in when obviously Daniel Ricciardo had that hand injury, and you know he couldn't have done any better.
And I'd have to absolutely agree with you there. He just simply had 5 races where he showed his absolute excellence. And obviously he fended off Max Verstappen to get into Q3 in Singapore, which is no mean feat. And I think that was the 10 out of 10 performance that kind of put him on the map and showed why he was deserving a seat in 2024 potentially. But there's no room in 2024 anymore. So he's got to think ahead to 2025. What he does in 2024 is crucial. I've said loads of dates consecutively here. My mouth is beginning to kind of digress. But in next year, potentially it's a make or break for Liam Lawson because he's got to find a suitable championship for him that he wins, and he shows why he deserves an F1 seat in 2025. But those 5 races that he deputised for Daniel Ricciardo when he had his hand injury, just a breath of fresh air for AlphaTauri. Scored vital points for the team in Singapore. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I still do believe that Liam Lawson deserves a seat for next season. How he's not got one, I don't know. The same can be said for the likes of Teo Pourchaire or Felipe Drugovich, who are waiting on the sidelines for another year. And it just completely bamboozles me why there's an established core of drivers in Formula One, and these young talents are unable to break through into the sport. I mean, the same case could be said for Ollie Behrman, who's going to have to try and win the F2 championship next year to potentially get a seat in 2025 for F1. But Liam Lawson, if he doesn't get a seat in 2025, God, I don't know what will happen. I think the world will go into meltdown if he doesn't get a seat. But after those 5 races in the season just gone by, he truly deserves a seat and a place among the elite in Formula One.
Just about edging out Liam Lawson to 7th place is Carlos Sainz with a 7.11. Sainz obviously got 2 10 out of 10s and 9 out of 10, but he only got in 3 races. There was only 3 races where he got below a 6 out of 10, which shows the consistent level he was driving at. He was very unlucky at the end of the season to miss out on even the chance to fight for 4th in the Drivers' Championship, where I think he would have won if he hadn't had that poor qualifying, but just couldn't make his way through the field. But I think most notably, the only non-Red Bull driver to win a race this season, and only one of 2 drivers to win a race this season that's not called Max Verstappen. 3 races that Verstappen didn't won, and Carlos Sainz in Singapore, an absolute masterclass of the performance. A great effort, and yeah, there's talk that Ferrari only wants to sign him a new contract for another year when Sainz is wanting 2. I think he fully deserves 2 years, a 2-year extension with Ferrari past 2024. And I'll be shocked if he doesn't get it, because he's been absolutely phenomenal this season. Particularly after the summer break, he had a string of performances which was phenomenal. And yeah, long may it continue for Carlos Sainz, because he's driving at a very, very good level this season.
Brad, if you're listening, give him 6 or 7 seasons. Let him have whatever number he wants on that contract. Get him to sign the team. Get him to sign it. Give him 6 or 7 seasons. That guy, alongside Charles Leclerc, whose performances are picked up, those 2 drivers have had a very good season. But Carlos Sainz, I mean, he was the leading light for Ferrari for a long, long time this season just gone. But I think in the last couple of races, just slightly dipped in form, which saw Charles Leclerc kind of pick up the reins, and he was able to kind of lead Ferrari forward. But like you mentioned, the only non-Red Bull driver to get a race victory this season. It just goes to show what sort of season Carlos Sainz has had. Maybe if he was able to have a good qualifying in Abu Dhabi, he would have been able to secure that P4 in the driver's standings. But we're sat here talking about if buts and maybes. But unfortunately, class is permanent, and Carlos Sainz showed that, consistently performing, consistently getting top 5 finishes, and consistently qualifying very, very well when Charles Leclerc was down the order and struggling. But yeah, a driver who's had a very, very good season, and long may it continue. Hopefully, Ferrari bring a fantastic car in 2024, and paired with the consistency of Carlos Sainz and the qualifying prowess of Charles Leclerc, maybe, just maybe, we might be able to see a closer battle for the Constructors and Drivers' Championship in 2024.
We can only hope. In 6th place now, with a 7.14, so just about beating Carlos Sainz's George Russell. Now, I do think he's a little bit too high, to be fair. I think he hasn't had the season that he would have liked. He hasn't got a 10 out of 10. But what he has got, I suppose, is 5 9s and 4 8s. I think it's been a difficult season for George. Obviously, only finished 8th in the Drivers' Championship, a long way ahead of 9th, might I just add. But he helped secure Mercedes 2nd in the Constructors on that final race of the season at Abu Dhabi. And I think he'll be disappointed with the level he's driven at to this season. I don't think he's been on the same level as Hamilton. And I think Hamilton's really showed his worth and showed out how he is that step above Russell. But Russell's got a lot of learning to do. There's a lot he can take out of this season. A decent effort, but maybe a little bit too high on this list.
Yeah, this is one I'm definitely shocked with, especially with Carlos Sainz being below George Russell. And I think that in this case, I think Carlos Sainz and George Russell should swap places realistically. Um, but yeah, sixth place, George Russell. It's not the season he would have hoped to have, purely on the basis of how Lewis Hamilton has performed. Um, and I've said it on numerous occasions. I think this season is sort of a reality check for George Russell. His first season at the Mercedes team, he was able to beat Lewis Hamilton, and then the next season, which is this season just gone, Lewis Hamilton wasn't having any of it. Absolutely outclassed him, and was able to do what he does best. Um, but yeah, it's a shocking one. George Russell, he's another driver who's, I wouldn't say he's had an average season. I'd say just above average. And I don't want to say he was getting a little bit too complacent, but I think complacency did creep in for George Russell ever so slightly throughout the 2023 season. I mean, it doesn't show in the driver ratings, but I think overall throughout the season that he's just had, finishing eighth in the championship, I think it shows. But it doesn't overall reflect in our driver ratings. He's just above Carlos Sainz, and I think a little bit unjustly. But that's the beauty of our average driver ratings. You never know what will happen. And yeah, George Russell has a very big season coming ahead.
Yeah, most definitely. Tied for fourth place, like in the Drivers' Championship, it's Fernando Alonso and Charles Leclerc. I'm quite surprised that Leclerc is ahead of Sainz. I think Sainz has had a better season, despite being pipped by Leclerc at the end there. So if you look at Leclerc first, he's had two out of 10 performances. But what's been brilliant from him is he's had 7 9 out of 10s and a 10 out of 10. And I'll just say his performances at the end of the season have been absolutely brilliant. It's exactly what he's needed. He obviously got that in the last 5 races. He obviously got that podium taken away from him at Cota, got a third place in Mexico, didn't start in Brazil, which was completely not his fault, and then had 2 second place finishes to end. And if you look at qualifying, his last 5 qualifying is first, second, first, second. It's fantastic. A great run of form to end the season, and that's what's really elevated above the likes of Russell, Sainz, Piastri from Charles Leclerc, that end of season form. But and then I'll speak about Alonso in the same breath. That man has been fantastic. He's only got the 1 10 out of 10 because I think we realised about halfway through we were being too harsh on him when he was putting that car second, third consistently. When he got about 6 podiums in the first 8 races, he's been unstoppable, Alonso. He's turning back the clock, and he's obliterated his teammate. You know, Alonso's 4th and Lance Stroll was down in 19th. He's not finished too far behind 3rd place either, who we'll get onto, but a great season from Fernando Alonso. It's just a pity that towards the end of the season, the car wasn't all there, but to end the season with that podium in Brazil was nothing short of exceptional.
I mean, 2 drivers that finished neck and neck in the Drivers' Championship and finished neck and neck in the driver ratings. It's just a perfect combination, I think. And they've had overall, I think, 2 very different seasons. Fernando Alonso's start in the season was fantastic, getting podium after podium after podium. And Charles Leclerc's start to the season wasn't all that. I think once Charles Leclerc started picking up podiums and pole positions, that's when the kind of tide swung in Charles Leclerc's favour, and he was able to do his utmost best to finish in 4th place in our driver ratings alongside Fernando Alonso. But both of these 2 drivers have had different seasons, but overall they've been very, very good. You say that you're surprised that Carlos Sainz has finished below Charles Leclerc. I'd agree with you to an extent, because I think if you're looking at the consistency level that Carlos Sainz has showed, it's to a greater level than Charles Leclerc. But I think the pole positions and the podium speak for themselves for Charles Leclerc. And he was able to kind of just edge out Carlos Sainz in our driver ratings and in the drivers' championship. And for Fernando Alonso, like you said, wound back the clock, um, putting the Aston Martin team on his back and doing what he does best, finishing on the podium. And he was even fighting for pole position at Monaco until Max Verstappen snatched it away from him. So it's been a very good season from the two drivers. Hopefully, we see him up there once again next season. But I don't think you can fault them at all throughout 2023.
And then onto our podium. And in third place is Lando Norris with an average of a 7.39. Lando Norris has got 5 10 out of 10 performances this season. Only Verstappen has got more. He's been brilliant. He's got, 8 podiums? Apart from Verstappen, he's got the most podiums out of anybody. Brilliant form to end the season. And if that McLaren was this good all season, I think he would have got a win at some point. And yeah, a great run of form. 205 points at the end, missing out on 4th place by a point. I think, to be fair, I'd be a bit worried if I was if McLaren was that good all season, because he would have absolutely obliterated Lewis Hamilton. He would have finished above Sergio Perez. It's a shock he hasn't got that win yet. I know, obviously, Verstappen's driven exceptionally well, but it's only a matter of time. Lando Norris has really proven himself to be potentially a world champion one day. He's been great all season long. And when that car's from Austria onwards, when that car has been at that level, he's performed.
You mentioned there he's been a great all season. I don't think he's been great all season. Just when McLaren had that upgrades that you mentioned just there at the end. I think obviously McLaren were a team to be reckoned with as soon as those upgrades came on, and Lando Norris showed exactly what those upgrades did to that car. Absolutely, it was absolutely on flame. Silverstone, to name one, in the imagination, where we had 2 Brits on the podium for the first time in a long time. And McLaren held the lead for quite a few laps with Lando Norris until a certain Max Verstappen saw it away from him. But it's just been a season to remember, I think, for Lando Norris, especially as soon as those upgrades came on for McLaren. And like you mentioned there, if a 2024 car starts like this and continues like this for McLaren, maybe they're another team that can challenge Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship in 2024. Maybe we see a 4-way battle for first place. You never know. But Lando Norris, fantastic season, fantastic driver, and most definitely a future world champion if he stays at McLaren or if he decides to move on and venture somewhere else.
And moving on now to 2nd place, and it's no surprise that it's not Max Verstappen, it's Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton has been exceptional this season. He hasn't had the form towards the end of the season to quite match it, but he's got 2 10 out of 10s, 8 9 out of 10s. There's only been 2 races he's got below a 6 out of 10, and in fact, only 6 races he's got below an 8 out of 10. That's just showing how good a season he's had. The fact at one point he was challenging for Sergio Perez, and obviously he would have actually gone ahead of him had his podium at Coton not been taken away. I know he finished some way back in the end, but it's been a great season from Hamilton. But I still can't believe it's been 2 years since he last won a race. We need to see Lewis Hamilton back on top of the podium once again. Give him a car that will challenge that is able to match Red Bull, and he is the only driver on the grid that can compete with Verstappen. I stand by it. We talk about Alonso and Norris and Leclerc and how good they've performed this season, but Lewis Hamilton is the only driver that can go toe-to-toe with Verstappen. Give him a car that is on that level and watch another fantastic championship battle. So that's all I have to add. A great performance from Hamilton, 8 out of 10. exactly for the season. So 0.6 ahead of Norris, but nowhere near the guy who's in first place.
Give him a championship car and he'll deliver. 2 years without a race victory. Yeah. That's
Hey,
what I'm gonna say.
because of but you see how bad that car is last season. You see the level for stat. If Hamilton,
Oh, he's been muted. Oh, what a shame. What a shame. He's been muted.
don't
Oh,
mute
what a
me,
shame.
don't mute me. If Hamilton had this car last season and Verstappen wasn't performing at this exceptional level, Hamilton would have ended up with a few race victories last season. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
Well, once again, Ethan Evans, if buts or maybes, not absolutes. It's okay. It's okay because I agree with you. I know that Hamilton's had a very good season. It's just the race victories that have been eluding him for the last 2 seasons that have kind of hampered any progress for Mercedes. I mean, they did finish second. Don't get me wrong, they finished ahead of Ferrari and the McLarens. But I think it's the race victories that Mercedes are wanting and are needing. And 2024, it could be a turning point for Mercedes. But Lewis Hamilton, going back to him, very, very consistent, similarly to Carlos Sainz. But I think he's just been able to kind of eke out every inch of that performance in his car. And he's been able to do what he does best and to secure a lot of good performances and got a lot of good race finishes. So P2 in the championship, in our driver ratings championship, but P3 in the drivers championship. Yeah, very good season from Lewis Hamilton.
But there's only one man that's going to be winning this list. He's had 18 9 or 10s out of 22 races. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is, of course, Max Verstappen, an average grade of a 9.11. And to be honest, I am sick to death of saying how good this guy is because he is absolutely exceptional. Um, on a different planet this season. He's been unbelievable, and he's fully deserved the championship victory. The fact he would have won the constructors championship on his own, but I'll go back to what I said on the last episode. He got 575 out of 620 points this season. That is unbelievable, and I don't think we need to go much more into it because of how fantastic he's been. But another great season from him.
Da, 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 Max Verstappen, da, 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 Max. Unless you want me to play the Dutch national anthem, which I don't want to hear for the next 3 months, because I'm seriously sick of that national anthem. Don't get me wrong, if there's any Dutch people listening, I'm not disrespecting your country. I'm just sick of hearing your national anthem every single weekend. It's still ringing in my ear a week on from the last race. But yeah, fantastic season from Max Verstappen. I've said on numerous occasions there's not enough adjectives to describe his season. He's had a season where he's just been able to break record after breaking record after breaking record. And he's just been unstoppable. It showed him a drivers' championship. It showed him a constructors' championship. I mean, yeah, it's just a season of outclassing the whole field, the whole grid, and showing why he is now in an elite club of 3-time world champions.
Yeah, so that rounds up our 1 to 10 driver ratings for this season. It's been a very long season. I think I'm relieved that it's over, even though I'm still going to miss it every single weekend for the next 3 months. But it'll be nice to have a break, and hopefully when we come back to Bahrain next year, we can have a bit more of a championship battle on. That's all we're looking for. We're just looking for a championship fight and not for the guy to win 19 out of 22 races. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But thank you all for listening along. It's been a great season, as we said. And we'll be seeing you on the next episode. Bye.